Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for being with us today. My name is Doug Robertson. I'm chairman of the Board of Commissioners in Douglas County and also president of the Association of O&C Counties. With us today are the folks that are on the front line in county government to a large extent, primarily representing county administrative functions and public safety. And we're here today to give you a sense of what we're going through currently as it relates to the funding crisis in rural resource-dependent counties, and also, as important as anything, is what the public might expect if two things don't happen. One, the discussion about a reauthorization of bridge funding for county government. The second, if we are unsuccessful in getting some measure of federal forest management through Congress. If neither of those things happen, the situation that we face on a daily basis is simply going to get worse, and the public will begin to see that in many areas that you'll hear from today. I've already seen it. As you know, many of Oregon's rural resource-dependent counties are facing a multitude of challenges brought about by the expiration of what was a rapidly declining safety net program and the failure of the federal government to provide reasonable and balanced management of our federal forest lands. These circumstances impact not only counties but entire communities. Chronic double-digit unemployment and the social ills that predictably follow are all too evident in many parts of our state. This, combined with the rapid decline of the health of our federal forests due to fire, insect infestation, and disease, has created a perfect storm which has crippled the economy and the social and physical infrastructure in many areas of Oregon. Many of these impacted counties and communities are at a crossroads. The path of maintaining the status quo will inevitably lead to insolvency and a rapid decrease in the livabilities of many areas of our state. There is, however, another path, one that provides an innovative and balanced alternative to managing our national forests and BLM lands. This approach includes significant gains in the area of conservation, while creating thousands of new jobs, adequate resources for county government, and a sustainable flow of raw material for the wood products industry. It is the O&C Trust Conservation and Jobs Act, which is part of a larger forest management bill, H.R. 1526, moving through the House of Representatives. We'll discuss that bill in more detail a little later, but now I would like you to hear from some of those elected officials who face these difficult circumstances on a daily basis. First, I would like to introduce Jackson County Commissioner John Rachor. John?
Thank you, Doug. You know, in Jackson County, we like to say we're in pretty good shape, but really we're headed downhill just like our fellow counties. I looked up some numbers, and 5 years ago we had 1,075 what we call FTEs, which were the equivalent of employees. Here we are 5 years later, or 4 years later, with 888. We lost about 500 of them there, or 300 of them there. And then in this last year, we're down to 836, so we lost another 50. So this is just going to keep winding down unless we find a solution. 7 years ago, we were receiving about $23 million in O&C replacement funds or secure rural schools. This year, we're receiving zero. That's $23 million out of the budget. I mean, that's tough. To give you some example of some of the cuts we've made this year, our code enforcement department, we cut $100,000 out of there. Our service partners, now these are important. These are CASA, these are Access Food, On Track, the Salvation Army. We cut another $100,000 there. Our libraries, we cut $250,000 out. OSU Extension, we cut out $204,000, which will virtually eliminate that program unless we do something else. Our health department, we cut $100,000 out of there. Our wildlife control, this is the guy that comes out and kills the coyotes eating your sheep. We eliminated that completely. There's $60,000. Our veterans, and that's a tough one. I'm a veteran. We cut $150,000 out of that program. And then the big one, the one I'm most concerned about, is we cut $250,000 out of the sheriff's department. And those are tough numbers. Now, all you have to do is look outside, you know, at the smoke to see. You know, and that's the root of this is federal timber management. So I'd like to talk about that for just a little bit. I was in a meeting last week over at Grants Pass, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from Mike McLean, representative over there. He said the biggest hindrance to employee in our area is the federal government. And that's correct. I mean, he was correct. There's so many restrictions on our ability to harvest our natural resources. It's tough to get anything done. I also want to quote Jennifer Kraus Felipe from Rough and Ready. She said that they have purchased, before their mill closed down, they purchased $18 million, or 18 million feet of timber. Of that, 15 million feet of that is under protest or litigation or appeal somehow. And of that 15 million, 1 million of it is burned in the last 2 weeks. You know, that's a terrible figure. You know, now, on Tuesdays, once a month, and on Tuesday we had a breakfast meeting with Dane Barron, who's the regional forester here for the BLM. Usually Rob McWhorter's there for the Forest Service. And these guys are good guys. I mean, you sit down and talk to them, and they want to see timber harvest. They want to see forest management. But they're hamstrung by what goes on in Washington, D.C. And so, you know, I can't blame it on them, but like I told them, you know, it's our own fault. We're in the name of conservation, we're loving the spotted owl to death. You know, I mean, they're just going away, and through what we felt in the past, not we, but some people felt was proper forest management. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the middle of Crater Lake in a rowboat and I'm dying of thirst and nobody will give me a drink. You know, so, but as I said before, I see a ray of hope out there, and this is HR 1526 that Doug just spoke about. You know, I want to personally thank our Congressman Walden, DeFazio, and Schrader for their part, which is part of this, the O&C Trust Conservation and Jobs Act. And I especially want to thank Peter DeFazio. He went against what I think a lot of his constituents felt on timber management. You know, he's from Lane County, he's from Eugene, and there's a lot of anti-logging people up there, but he can see what's happening in Lane County. So he took action, and as a ranking member of the House committee that moved that forward, I want to thank him for that. So now in September, that bill will go to the full House, and then from there it'll go on over to the Senate, and there we have the opportunity. Senator Ron Wyden, who's the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, has the ability to move that through. And so I'm betting the farm on that, I guess you could say. I won't go into all the provisions of the, I could talk for a long time. I won't get into all the provisions of the of HR 1526, such as, you know, the 90,000 acres of wilderness set aside. But there's something for everybody in this bill. One of the important things in it is it allows for an expedited process for salvage after these fires. And we really need that. I mean, during the Biscuit fire, a lot of that timber's still standing, but some of it stood for over 2 years, and it's worthless after that point. So anyway, this is HR 1526, one of the things that could solve that. You know, when I was in high school in the 60s, actually, it was in Douglas County, I remember there was talk then about stopping logging, and my question was why? And people said, well, we have to protect the forest and the wildlife. Well, look what it's got us. You know, massive forest fires like today. And imagine what's going on out there now, the habitat that's being destroyed even today as we speak here. But anyway, I think we do have the opportunity to repair this damage that's been done over the last several decades, or many decades, and HR 1526 is the way to do it. I'm going to support that fully. You know, I really believe it. Thank you.
John, thank you very much. Next, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Simon Hare from Josephine County. Simon is a board member of the Association of O&C Counties, and also was a member of the governor's O&C task force. Simon?
Thank you, Doug. Slip off of there. It's kind of ironic, but we didn't review our statements, but they're pretty much almost word for word exactly the same. So I kind of feel, rather than being redundant, I'll try to get through this and not say some of the same things. But honestly, I just want to thank Jackson County for hosting this, and for actually all of the people in the media for covering this really important issue. Frankly, that's one of the reasons I ran for office. Pretty young in this job, but at the same time, I understand the challenges that we're facing, especially in counties like Curry County and Josephine County, that if we don't solve this, my generation, the ones coming after these colleagues of mine, we're the ones who are going to be saddled with this, and it's frankly unacceptable, and should be for most of my generation. So I'm just gonna, I could talk forever on the O&C Trust Conservation and Jobs Act, but there's other people who could speak more clearly to it. But I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things that I think are pretty important, that are thoughtful, positive aspects that really go a long way towards alleviating some of the concerns that I think the conservation community and the environmental community have. and it really should alleviate a lot of their concerns. So one of the things is it establishes a conservation fund. 5% of the revenue would go into conservation measures over time, and it provides a consolidated process for blocking up and consolidating this checkerboard pattern in 18 O&C counties throughout the state. Makes it really tough to manage either for forest management practices or conservation and watersheds. And it provides for greater riparian setbacks along rivers and streams that are vital for the coho and other vital species. It establishes nearly over 90,000 acres of a wilderness and special places designation. And it permanently preserves old growth, which is one of the things I think keeps Peter DeFazio, a member who typically wouldn't be on this side of an issue, at the table and really working towards a solution. And I too want to say thank you to Peter DeFazio and the other members who have stood diligently through a lot of criticism to maintain a steadfast vision on a solution to this really challenging. It's a real problem in our rural counties, and it's only growing. Even for those who typically wouldn't feel such a thing, Lane County, it's going to be a challenge for Douglas and Jackson County in the future, not having this as an industry or a revenue stream for vital county services, which these people will talk about in just a minute. So I may seem unduly optimistic, and maybe it's because of my age, but I think that we are poised really well for a solution here. We've got unhealthy, overstocked federal forests, and most people, I think, would agree to that. We also have more trees in Oregon now than in all recorded history, and I think that's an important fact that over time we have managed and reforested the areas that have been logged in the past. So we're blessed to still have 1 billion board feet of capacity in the infrastructure in the state of Oregon. A lot of people say that industry is dying, that even if you brought back the opportunity to log, that there aren't the mills available and the processing. AFRC says that there's 1 billion board feet of capacity, so that's an argument that just frankly isn't there. There's millions of dollars worth of investment that's just waiting to reinvest in the existing infrastructure to make it more efficient. If they had a sustainable and access to federal timber that they could rely on, and I think that's important as well. So county governments, like we've been talking about for years and possibly even decades, are really dependent on either shared receipts or an extension of federal payments. And at the end of the day, I'd say that most of the county commissioners throughout the state that are in O&C counties, they no longer want what's considered a welfare check. They really want the jobs in the economy that's tied to this really important piece of legislation. It's probably speculated that it could provide almost 10,000 jobs in the 18 O&C counties, and that's nothing to sneeze at. In Josephine County, where our unemployment rate is hovering just below 12%, when the state's average is closer to 8%. So we need all of the rural jobs and these incomes as possible, and that really provides the other leg of the stool. So we've tried several times to improve our tax base or the revenue stream through levy proposals for the criminal justice system, and been met without success for a decade or so. But really, I think from my perspective, until we have an economy that's diversified greater than just tourism and washing dishes for tourists 3 months out of the year and broader things, we've got to have that timber industry to provide for an economy that allows people to pay more in taxes. And I think that's the other leg of the stool that I'm really going to strive for, and my support for 1526 is hinged on that. I think people in Oregon are starting to realize that the do-nothing management style of the past 3 decades has really brought us nowhere. Our tourism industry has increased, but I don't think it's a reduction. It's due to a direct reduction in the amount of timber. We've seen catastrophic wildfires in the Kalmiopsis wilderness area, 550,000 acres during the Biscuit Fire, and that does nothing for improving the watersheds, the habitat, and the tourism industry. Recently, with the fires that have been taking place in Josephine County, the recreation industry was losing $100,000 a day while the Rogue River was closed down because of unmanageable wildfires. And they're catastrophic. And eventually, if everything burns, our tourism industry is not going to be worth anything. Nobody wants to come and raft Mars. They really want that beautiful, pristine wilderness, but we have to protect it in a way and manage the surrounding area that really provides for that in the future and for future generations. I want to thank a Governor John Kitzhaber for convening the task force that he did. This whole solution has to come about through meaningful consensus and dialogue between the 2 or 3 different fractions of society that really are at odds over this. And I want to applaud Governor Kitzhaber being a self-professed environmentalist for supporting an increase in federal timber production, which could lead to greater forest health and restoration efforts. Finally, I think that Senator Ron Wyden is uniquely poised to really carry a large portion of the water on this. I think most people probably feel pretty comfortable that there's going to be some sort of federal forest management legislation that is approved by the entire House. But it really has to have the support of the Senate. And so Senator Wyden has got to take a leadership stand and moving this legislation forward. I think we're just blessed to have Senator Wyden in that position. And I feel confident that at the end of the day, the senator will come forward. He will do the right thing for these 18 O&C counties and really the future of federal forests in Oregon. We are hanging on the balance here. We don't have another 2 years in Josephine County to find a solution. We have a solution. It's a good piece of legislation that I think we've refined through the task force, the governor, and the county's proposed 5 different measures that increase the conservation aspects of this piece of legislation. And it may not be perfect, but I think it's a really great start. And so if we can all come together, I think we, with bold leadership, we're gonna be able to solve these challenges. And so that's why I support, fully endorse House Resolution 1526 and the provisions that address Oregon's federal forest management under the O&C Trust Conservation and Jobs Act. So, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Senator. Also, this afternoon, Commissioner Dave Itson from Curry County. Dave, thanks for coming by. We're very pleased that you're with us. You know, I think it's pretty much common knowledge that for those of us in elected position, in the commissioner's position, it's been our experience that public safety is the primary concern whenever there's polling done, responses that we get. Public safety is the one thing that goes to the top of the list of concerns. And we're very happy today to have with us, as I mentioned earlier, those folks who in many ways are on the front lines dealing with the issues of public safety every day. I'd like to introduce Rick Wesenberg. Rick is the district attorney in Douglas County and also a board member of the State Association of District Attorneys. Rick?
Thank you, Doug. Tim Callahan, who's the president of the Oregon District Attorneys Association, could not be here today, and so I will speak in his stead. With me today are 3 outstanding professional prosecutors. Each of them has dedicated their careers to public service. They are, of course, Alex Gardner, Lane County District Attorney, Stephen Campbell, Josephine County District Attorney, and of course, Jackson County's own Beth Heckert. Often the question that people ask is, how has the loss of these dollars affected your office? And that question misses the point. Public servants throughout Oregon are accustomed to the expectation that they must do more, must accomplish more with less. Instead, the better question is, how does the loss of these funds affect the public and the communities which we all serve? And that question is what we must recognize. It's the public, it's our friends, it's our neighbors that will suffer and that do suffer. They pay their taxes, they vote on election day, they live productive lives, believing that when they need help, help will be there for them. But it's these people, these innocent citizens, for whom help is often delayed, if it arrives at all. They are the ones who, for long periods of time, have to wait for the police to appear simply because law enforcement in our counties are spread so thin. It is the innocent citizens who believe that when an arrest is made, the offender will actually be held in jail. It is the reluctant victim, terrified of her abusive boyfriend, but coming forward anyway, because she doesn't want that abuse to spread to her children, who suffers when she's told, well, yeah, the trial will be held in 6 months at the earliest. It's the elderly widow who calls 911 and is put on hold, or the young child who bravely reports a crime and soon sees that the defendant is shopping in a local grocery store. It's the business owner, it's the local business owner who can't report losses anymore to his insurance company because the premiums are already so high, or who has to wait weeks and weeks for a police report that he can send to his insurance company. It's the drug addict who receives even less treatment, who for shorter lengths of time, and in so doing, simply perpetuates the cycle of crime and the long-term costs to each of our communities that are already strapped. Understand, the county commissioners, the county sheriffs, the county district attorneys, all of them, each and every one of them, have devoted enormous amounts of time and talent into rebuilding and to rebuilding again their offices in an effort to make them more efficient and more cost-effective. These dedicated public officials that you have before you are delivering on their promise to do more with less, and in the continued efforts to meet the needs of our communities which they serve. But also understand this, there's a limit. That the taxpaying public deserves adequate services, but the funding for the basic critical services is simply no longer there. And actually, this is the perfect time for me to introduce the next speaker. In spite of his office suffering highly publicized and crippling losses in their budget over a period of years, Lane County District Attorney Alex Gardner continues to lead a highly productive office. With a string of prosecutions of terrifying and violent offenders, District Attorney Alex Gardner exemplifies leadership in a new era, providing more with a whole lot less. But as you will hear from District Attorney Gardner and the other speakers, we can't bleed blood from a turnip. There's no more meat. We're at the bone. And frankly, the situation is dire. And the increase in crime that our communities are experiencing is directly related to the decrease in funding of these essential agencies. I hope, if you take anything away from this presentation, I hope it's this. District Attorney Gardner, the other district attorneys, the sheriffs, the county commissioners, they are all committed to one thing, and that is serving our communities. But it is simply wrong for us to allow our communities to lose what they deserve: support, safety, and justice. Thank you. And now, Lane County District Attorney Alex Curry.
Thank you, Rick, and Doug, and Jackson County for hosting this. I have so much to say, I couldn't possibly squeeze it into 5 minutes, but I'm going to do that for several reasons. Out of respect for you and the people who are here, and frankly, my back is in very bad shape, which is why I sat down a few minutes ago. Lane County is about 4,600 square miles. It's roughly the size of Connecticut, and it's a population of about 365,000 people now. On an average patrol shift, we'll have 2 deputy sheriffs and a patrol sergeant covering that area. The police services division of the sheriff's office has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, where we had 99 deputies in 1979. Now that our population has swelled by about 25%, we're down to 16. Where we had 28 detectives in the sheriff's office, we're down to 4. The DA's office had 11 investigators in 1979. We have 2 left in our criminal division. We have about half the number of deputy DAs we used to have. We had 32 in 1979. We have 17 in the criminal division today. For perspective, our crime volume coming into the DA's office is about 170 cases a week. The majority of those are felonies, and we're not getting most of the lower level felony cases that we used to get because frankly we don't have anybody to file them. Lane County a few years ago had 8 officer-involved shootings in a 13-month period of time. We are not living in Mayberry anymore. We have serious crime. You may notice that many of your neighbors are Californians. You'll notice that we have noticed in any event, the California gang members from LA and San Diego and San Francisco, they can take a bus ticket to Oregon too, and they have. We have real gang problems in most of Oregon's large metro areas. We have a real need for legitimate, properly funded, adequately staffed law enforcement. There is a point at which you can't do more with less. And we are there. We have shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And so what I find most Lane County citizens want to know is, why can't you guys make do the way they do in Portland and Salem? They don't get it. They don't understand the differential in the funding. And so I thought, for an exercise, I just look at general fund growth comparison, because we're all used to hearing government whine about not having enough money. And so it's gotten easy for most of us to sort of tune that out. Of course, they all say they don't have enough money. So I looked at the Lane County General Fund in 1979, and I compared it with the State of Oregon General Fund and Eugene and Springfield. Those are the 2 largest cities in our area, to see what a balanced revenue blend growth looks like over time. Eugene and Springfield were about 400% of their 1979 level. The state of Oregon is over 500% of its 1979 level if you look at the general fund growth. Lane County is less than 150%. So in order to feel the same level of pain, the state of Oregon would have to have maybe a 60 or 70% general fund reduction. And for those of you who aren't familiar with government finance, general fund is what you get to spend where you want to spend it. It's not dedicated federal money. It's the money we get to apply based on our priorities, and frankly, it's the lion's share of law enforcement support. So no general fund means no deputies, no DAs, no jail capacity, nothing, and that's where we are today. Lane County is very fortunate that we recently passed a small jail levy, and we are profoundly grateful for that. But to put it in perspective, that will bring us up to 1/3 of the Oregon average capacity per 1,000 crimes reported. So what it means for us is we can now reliably hold kiddie sex abusers, rapists, bank robbers, and serious assault cases. It doesn't mean that we can do anything significant with burglary and car theft. Lane County, we have 3 or 4 cars stolen a day. At one point, we had 5 or 6 cars stolen a day. Last thing I want to mention, because I'm trying to speed talk my way through this. As you probably know, the DA's office responds to officer-involved shootings, and I try and make it to those events myself for a number of reasons. The last sheriff's office shooting that I responded to was east of Cottage Grove, and the deputy who was involved in the shooting was responding to a man entering the home, breaking into the home with a gun. So it was the very highest priority call, and the sheriff's office was doing its very best to respond. But where you only have 2 patrol deputies covering an area the size of Connecticut, it can be a long drive. The deputy who was actually involved in the shooting responded from more than 80 miles away. He was the closest law enforcement response to that resident whose house was being burglarized by somebody with a firearm. That's just not acceptable. It is just not acceptable. That is a level of danger none of us should be willing to tolerate. So, and the federal handouts are, I guess, a blessing. They've allowed us to provide a level of service that's beyond what our local tax bases have been able to support, but it's not enough. We can't make do, we can't provide critical services with essentially 1/4 to 30% of what normal healthy communities have. And sorry for the wine fest. Thank you again, Doug and Paul, for letting me speak. And now I'd like to introduce District Attorney Stephen Campbell from Josephine County and District Attorney Beth Heckert from Jackson County.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Campbell from Josephine County. These are the kind of talks I don't think Alex likes to give, and I don't like to give either, to talk about how dysfunctional our offices are because of lack of finances. Excuse me. But I'll tell this story of Josephine County because this story may be coming to your communities next if we don't do something. In the spring of 2012, the Secure Rural Schools Act had expired, and our county had to put together a budget for 2012-2013 without any federal funding. The average amount of money we had gotten under the timber receipts act, the O&C Act, that turned into the safety net program, that turned into Secure Rural Schools, was $12 million to $15 million a year. That was funding our criminal justice system. So in 12, without any money projected to come in from that program, I'll just go through what happened to the district attorney's office. We had, I had 9 deputy prosecutors, one dedicated to child support and juvenile prosecution. Of my 8 attorneys dedicated to adult criminal conduct, 4 were cut, 4 were laid off. So I had immediately 1/2 of the staff that I needed, and even at that point I wasn't able to do all of the cases. So this is how that kind of tracked out, and it's a similar story to the one Alex just told. We laid off also support people that supported those 4 attorneys. We were able to prioritize our caseload by prioritizing person felonies, which is prioritized in our statute by our Class A, B, C classifications. And we were able to do our major felonies, murders, assaults, sexual assaults, child abuse, all of those we're able to keep on. But with regard to the misdemeanor caseload, we had to cut almost every misdemeanor. And some of you may know that driving under the influence is a misdemeanor. We only did the very highest level of those, so those were going unprosecuted. Those are people that crossed county lines under the influence. We were unable to do domestic violence cases, some of our most dangerous cases. You don't intervene, those things can go bad, and you can have a murder next week. What we told those victims is try to get services through other people. Use the shelters. You may have to move to another community with adequate law enforcement to protect you. They can go to court and get a restraining order, but we didn't have the police office, at least sheriff's office, we didn't have, and the sheriff's going to talk about his impact, to go to those houses and pick up people when they're violating those orders or to prosecute those. In the area of felony property prosecution, my story is similar to Alex's. If it was an unauthorized use, someone stole your car, if we happened to get it back, we wouldn't prosecute that. What we did was set the standard at if it's over $5,000 of loss, we'll try to do your case. Over time, we were able to move that down, but there were a lot of victims not getting service, and they deserved the service. Other significant impacts to the system, the criminal justice system, were the loss of jail beds. The jail, like the district attorney, is a bellwether part of the system. When you lose jail beds, your corrections program begins to suffer almost immediately. When someone is ordered to do 10 days jail or other custodial program, most of those offenders are put on a custody program like work release, like a drug treatment program, or like a home detention program. The hammer you have, if they don't comply with those programs, is a jail cell. When you take that away, the motive to even show up for those programs is lost. So those programs immediately suffered. Going to the other side of the ledger, the court. When we file a case in court, if somebody doesn't show up when ordered, if they do it 1 or 2 times, in a healthy system, they go to jail until their case is concluded. But when you don't have a jail cell to sanction those people that do not show up to court, they just continue to fail to appear, and the docket actually gets stagnated by those that have that all figured out. With the loss of sheriff's deputies in our county, and my sheriff is here, Gilbertson will talk about that. Our Oregon State Police, whose primary function is the safety of the highways and the patrol of the highways, has been diverted to going to emergency calls throughout our county. So they're basically one of the rippling effects of this lack of funding that goes through the rest of the system that doesn't even depend on county funding. They are not carrying out their function, or almost are not, that are helping us going to emergencies within our county. Victims of crime deserve protection, they deserve restitution, they deserve justice. That's why I took the oath to be a DA, is to bring justice to people that cross the line and violate our criminal laws. But we do need resources in order to carry out our duties. And so I'm very hopeful, and certainly this is part of the solution if we can break this stagnation or the stalemate, really, that on our timber dollars, and work something out, we can help our system and help begin to heal. My colleague Beth Heckert.
Really, I think what we're seeing is a kind of a window into the future for where Jackson County stands. Our budget, as well in the Jackson County District Attorney's Office, was reduced by $200,000 from the last fiscal year to this fiscal year. And we also get most of our funding in the criminal division from the general fund. 95% of the funding comes from the general fund. So in the District Attorney's Office, in order to make up for that budget reduction, we had to lose 3 positions. So we lost 1 deputy district attorney, leaving us with 18 deputy DAs, and we lost a restitution specialist who worked with the victims, as well as a child support receptionist who worked over in that department. And what that really translates into is people having to wait longer, victims having to wait longer in order to get services from our office, cases being filed later, some cases not being filed at all. We, as I said, you can kind of see what Josephine counties had to do, what Lane counties had to do, and Jackson County, we always prosecuted pretty much everything that we could prove that ever was submitted to our office. That has been the history the whole time that I've been there for 25 years. And suddenly this year, we just weren't able to do that any longer. So we had to start not prosecuting some cases. And we prioritized the cases as well, and what we're not prosecuting is some residue, small drug cases. But again, those are people who are out committing lots of other crimes as well in the community in order to support their drug habit, and it may be that much longer before they can get into drug services and get some treatment and hopefully stop that cycle. In the District Attorney's Office here in Jackson County, we file about 6,900 cases a year with the Circuit Court. So we're a busy office, and we're just not able to continue to do everything that we've done in the past with fewer and fewer resources. When we see how the other counties responded to it, I mean, that gives us some idea of what is to come if we don't figure out this resource issue for our community. So those kinds of changes are going to happen. There'll be additional cutbacks perhaps next year if we don't get this figured out. So it's really an important issue for everyone in our community to be working on and to think about. As it's been said by the other DAs, you know, at the end of the day, we need the resources to fulfill our obligations to the community, which is to provide that service to the community, to provide safety and justice. And we aren't able to do that if we don't have all of the resources.
Thank you, Beth. Stephen, Alex, Rick, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce Sheriff from Curry County, Sheriff John Bishop, who is also the Secretary of the Oregon Sheriff's Association. John?
Thank you, Jack. With me, I also have Sheriff Gilbertson, who you'll hear from later, from Josephine. I have Sheriff John Hanlon from Douglas County, and Sheriff Mike Winters from here in Jackson County. For the sake of time and for you guys hearing the same thing over and over again, I had a sort of a speech to read to you. Rocky McVeigh has a copy of that, but I'm going to deviate from it and sort of speed this up just a little bit so you can have some of my other thoughts. What I want to talk to you about, though, is how this affects the Sheriff's Office directly. Most all the Sheriff's offices for the counties are about 50% or more of the general fund budget. And so this means when the general fund gets cut, then the sheriff's offices take it on the chin. Curry County is no different. Our O&C funds, our SRS funds, have been declining since 1994. And what this has meant that in 1988, when I started as a deputy, we had 16 road deputies, 3 sergeants, 3 detectives. We were involved in multiple disciplinary teams from child abuse, narcotics, marijuana eradication, and such. Today, I have 4 patrol deputies. I have no sergeants, and I have 1 detective. This has really put a strain on us, and I'll go into why that is. We continue to be creative with the money that we are given, but even then, at a certain point, you have to hit the line, as you've heard today. You just can't do any more with the resources that you've been given. And as inflation grows, as technology changes, as your population grows, and your funding decreases, it just all adds to a perfect storm. So what has this done for Curry County? Well, my deputies' workload has increased beyond belief to where they're mostly 20 to 30 reports down at any single time. And the reason they're down is because of their call load and the need to respond to emergencies. They frankly do not have time to write their reports. And this starts to impact the whole system. It impacts the legal system from the district attorneys being able to file on time. It impacts the courts, and it impacts the legal defense. And when we cannot get our reports done on time because we're out answering calls, it just starts that ripple effect as you've heard. So to meet some of these challenges, we prioritize our calls. Some of the calls that we have always answered now get a form sent to you, you fill it out, and we'll enter it into the computer. They never do see a deputy. And I have a problem with that because what that does, and in turn, it erodes the public trust and the cooperation that all of us sheriffs have enjoyed over the years with our constituents. We are the representative of our communities, and the sheriff is elected, and he's elected from the people of that county, and that's our job. And I have numerous friends who, while they might like me now, wonder why I'm doing what I'm doing or why I can't help them when they need help. Our overall responsibilities also suffer. It's not just patrol. Patrol is just one small division. Our jails, as you've heard, are either overcrowded, underfunded. Our search and rescue is basically relying on Title III money or donations, very little general fund, but that is a huge service that the sheriffs are mandated by the Oregon Constitution to provide. And any of you, as John Rachor's been here, and the sheriffs, search and rescues can take a lot of time and toll and equipment to handle. Emergency services, a lot of sheriffs have emergency services. For me, that means the Cascadia event, earthquake, tsunami, to be prepared. We flat aren't putting any money into that program when we know that that is going to happen somewhere down the road. Our civil service, our courts haven't stopped. And as you've heard about restraining orders, what about subpoenas, court orders for warrant arrests? The sheriff is mandated to serve those. Nobody else, it's the sheriff. And the courts have not said, well, we feel sorry for you so you don't have to serve them anymore. No, they have increased their workload on us as well. The other part of that is home foreclosures. Home foreclosures have just skyrocketed, and the sheriff's office is responsible for all of that. So that's something else that gets hit. And we see these drastic cuts. Speaking on behalf of OSSA, we do support this bill, not only because it gives us and the O&C counties a lifeline and hope for a long-term resolution for the public safety funding, but it also puts people back to work, and it makes them feel like they're contributing to their communities, which in turn helps us get us back to what we're doing. And part of that, and maybe the major part of that, is helping our citizens in emergencies and keeping our quality of life that we've enjoyed here in Oregon, us as adults, and not only keeping that, but make sure that it is maintained for our children and our children's children. Thank you. Gil?
I'm from Josephine County. Unfortunately, we were one of the offices that really took a hit. We went from a $12 to a $4 million budget last year. I laid off over 65% of my personnel. So I'm here today to kind of give you a preview of the coming attractions to your area if we can't fix this problem. So what I want to share with you today is that right now I have one patrol deputy to cover 1,642 square miles and a population around 43,000. We cannot keep up. We are buried. We truly are buried. Right now we have one 8-hour shift, 5 days a week. The stats I just ran, and there's a copy for the media on this. Burglary has increased 1,594% over the last year. Auto theft increased 1,714%. Theft increased 1,435%. Domestic assault, 1,100% increase. Criminal mischief, that increased by 439%. Fugitive arrests that failed to appear, there's 74% of them that are not being arrested. We just simply can't put them in jail. In fact, it came so close to closing our jail, it wasn't even funny. That number just dropped to a point where we actually had to let a lot of people go one day. So it's not good. We don't want to do that to the public. One thing it's not ever really talked about is liability. Can we give that liability away? We cannot. I can tell you right now, Josephine County currently has 2 tort claims been filed against the sheriff's office on issues that we weren't even notified of until after the fact. So liability is something that we need to address as well in all this. We do no proactive law enforcement. Right now I have, on average, 20 to 30 plus calls on the screen per day waiting for some kind of response. You know, some people would have you think that we're doing okay in Josephine County. Tell that to the well over 36,000 people that called last year for some kind of help, and we couldn't provide a lot. We do no significant follow-up investigations at all. With one deputy on the road, and soon I'll have 2. But if just one of them gets caught up in an investigation, they no longer can respond to something. Our dispatch and our substations, like a lot of other places, have taken on the responsibility to help the public file those reports because the insurance claims require a police report for a theft. So you can go to one of our substations. I had to dismiss one of them. I've got 2 left. Or you can call and somebody will try to help you get a claim filed because, quite frankly, we don't have the time, and we just simply can't do it. With that, I'll pass it along. I'm sure the other sheriffs can add to this along with. So, Sheriff Mike Anderson.
Well, it's been long, so I'll try and bullet point it and wrap it up quick for you. First, I just want to thank the commissioners and the folks that are in this room for doing something. This has been a problem for years. When I first came here, well, I've lived in the county forever, but I did 3 years in Roseburg as a state police officer. I came back from Roseburg, assigned to Medford. There was 34 state police officers assigned to the Medford Patrol Office. At that time, there was 44 Jackson County Sheriff's deputies, so covering the rural areas for 2,800 square miles was 70 officers. When I left the state police in '98, there was 9 of us. I covered from the border up to Canyonville and down to the state line on 199 and as far up as Crater Lake. I've been the one guy that has been out there and had someone try and kill him with no backup there. I've been the one guy that has been assaulted by multiple suspects. And my backup was 45 minutes away. I've lived it. I know what it's coming to. And I know what these sheriffs are facing, and it's not good. You hear comments like the state police has diverted the resources to Josephine County. That is true. They've cut the resources from Jackson County that were here, diverted them over there. You could put another 100 state police officers in Josephine County right now, and you'll have the same result. Because if you can't lodge people in the jail,
And if you don't have a system, and what we're talking about here today is a system that is broken and badly broken. So I don't care how many police officers you put in Josephine County right now, you won't change the outcome. You may save lives because someone goes and intervenes, but if you don't have a place to put them, the jail, the prison system, the county jail system, the court system, the district attorneys, if you don't have the system in place, you'll make no difference. It's what we talk about and what we work so hard here in Jackson County to do is model a system. And that means that the sheriff's office, the district attorney, the courts, everyone works together, the commissioners, the county administrator, everyone to try to, community justice and stuff, to try to balance the system so that we can be as good as we can be. It's beyond that over in these other counties, in Curry and Josephine, and Douglas is on its way to some degree in Klamath. And so what happens when we have that large-scale event? I'll give you some points to ponder. You heard the sheriff talk about the Cascadia event. That's going to happen. And now, who do we call? Who do I call? No, there's no one police agency that can handle all that. You got your Disney glasses on if you think there is. It won't happen. So who do you call? You call your partners. I'm currently working on agreements, if you can believe it, with Orange County Sheriff's Office. Because I can't trust that the system that we have in Southern Oregon is going to work. It's so dilapidated. And so I'm having to reach hundreds of miles to try and build relationships with other police agencies that have numerous officers so that maybe when that event happens, I'm able to take care of the people that I'm responsible for. So I applaud the commissioners for what they're doing. If you think about this, we heard terms like squeeze blood out of a turnip and stuff. People don't want to pay more taxes. I don't want to pay more taxes. This comes without paying more taxes. If we go down and support this, if we get this pushed through, we're using a natural resource to pay the way and not have to raise a bunch of taxes on people. I mean, when we raise it, what happens? It all gets sent over to Egypt and every place we don't use it. We don't take care of America first. I mean, when's that going to happen? I mean, that's what people need to start understanding. Is we need to take care of Americans. We got people here that are hungry. We got people here that are sick. We got everything we've got in every other country. We got right here, and we're not taking care of Americans first. And so I applaud these men and women, anybody that was involved in it, for what they've done. And I think that we should get behind it. I think as media, you need to push this out. I think it needs to stay at the forefront, and let's get this thing pushed through and try and save the system we have left and start hiring some police officers back. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I think you can get a sense, any one of us could have probably talked for the entire length of time. I want to do three things very quickly. First, acknowledge two other county commissioners that are with us, Don Skundert and Doug Bridenfall from Jackson County. Thank you for being with us. You'll see three maps on the wall over here. Those maps are of the Roseburg BLM district. Many people have a really very little understanding of the difference between the BLM lands managed by BLM, the O&C lands, and the national forest. These are not national forests. They exist in no other state. They exist only in 18 counties in Oregon. They're a checkerboard of lands from Portland to Ashland, the remnants of the 1866 railroad grant. The first map shows you how interspersed with other industrial landowners the BLM checkerboard is. Just in the Roseburg district alone, you'll see 20 industrial landowners that own land within that checkerboard. The map on the far side, if you think of the Rogue Siskiyou or the Umpqua or the Willamette, you don't see a road system like you do on the BLM lands. That gives you an idea of how intensively these lands have been managed and the road systems that have been developed. Those aren't just roads. Many of them are legally created reciprocal rights-of-way to serve the intervening property owners. It's a very complex land base to manage. The middle map shows you how difficult the BLM, the difficulties they're faced with laying out a sail. The purple circles are the spotted owls. The owl circles that exist, the owl circles that used to exist, and those that might at some point in time. Those are called virtual owls. They don't exist, but the BLM still has to take those into consideration. Incidentally, that owl estimation model that you see there was recently thrown out by, in a lawsuit in the DC Circuit Court. So there is some progress, some recognition that this business of spotted owls and the policy of now killing the stronger, more adaptive of the species in order to save the weaker is, it's not just questionable, I think it's nuts, frankly, but that's an issue to be discussed later. The last thing I want to mention before if you have some questions, we all are aware of the Douglas Complex fires that have occurred, not just those, but others around our area. Those of us on the Association of O&C Counties Board have petitioned the BLM for cooperating agency status so we can start immediately working with those folks in the BLM and in the state office and our district managers on a recovery program. Obviously, public safety, transportation, watershed protection, and the extraction of the dead and dying material is very important to us. Without the safety net, those dead trees out there are our receipts. And unlike the county optics and the biscuit burn in 2002, we will be very aggressive with our efforts to see that area is properly managed in a post-fire situation. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for being here, your patience. If you do have any questions, let us know who you are, who you represent, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Paul? Paul Faddy was mailed again. Could you give us a rundown of how much O&C funding has dropped, say, in the last 20 years or 10 years, just to put it in perspective? I've got kind of bits and pieces of that.
Well, it varies by county. Let me just give you a snapshot of Douglas County. In 1993, the first safety net was established by the Clinton Forest Plan. That was to last 10 years. It was to diminish 3% a year. It was based on a historical formula. The idea was surely in 10 years we would have the issue of the spotted owl solved. Well, we didn't. And so it was renewed in 2000. The amount of money coming to the state of Oregon was somewhere in the neighborhood of $105, $110 million that was divided among the counties. Douglas County received somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $22 million. Our receipts today, if we were to go from the safety net, it's gone, to actual receipts, instead of receiving that $20 million, we would receive less than 3. So as has been pointed out by the DAs, the sheriffs, and Simon and John, our general fund revenue has diminished in dramatic terms. Remember, O&C funds, unlike Forest Service receipts, are discretionary. Those are the dollars we use for libraries, for veteran services, for health and social services. Forest Service money is dedicated, roads, bridges, and shared with education. Very distinct difference. That's why these O&C lands are so important to us. With no safety net, instead of 105 million, and I don't know the exact number, but I think it's about 9 million, 105 to 9 million if we go back on receipts, based on what's being harvested on those lands today. That's why the O&C Trust Conservation Jobs Act is so important to us. Everybody's worn out.
We gotta get this on the air.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks a
I
lot.
really appreciate it.
See you guys.